Okay guys, we're at Sam's studio, which is Lismore Mastering. Cover a little bit as to what mastering is, and who better to answer that question than a mastering engineer.
Yeah, okay, so looking at my chain, it's mainly EQ and compression. It feels like it brings the whole frequency range forwards and makes everything present in the same way. In the case of the master we're going to discuss today, I'm actually using this with no compression.
But what we wanted to do was to continue with the hard times mixing and mastering process, and we want to run through today what Sam has actually done in mastering hard times. Okay, so going back to hard times then.
Yeah.
Talk me through the process. Talk me through what you do, and if we can use this as an example.
Yeah. So generally, I'll start here. I can just listen to turn the volume up a bit.
So this is
pretty much the unmastered version here.
So what are you listening for to start with?
Yeah, so I'd start by just having a listen, see how it feels really. Having a quick look at the meters, see if there's anything phasey.
Right.
See if there's anything really sticking out, like flying around in the bottom end. Again, I don't really use these to make decisions, the spectrum analyzer, but it sometimes just spots me on them. Also checking that the mixes and clips coming in, that there's the headroom that's required. And then I'd really just be starting to listen to, I think like the vast majority of what we do in mastering is to do with EQ.
Yeah.
So start by thinking, how does this sit in terms of EQ? How does it feel in terms of tone?
So what was, if you can recall then, because obviously you've already mastered this.
Yeah.
So we're looking at this in a bit more in retrospect.
Yeah.
But what was the first thing that kind of stuck out on this track for you?
So I think really it feels a little bit veiled. It feels a little bit pushed back in the speakers. It feels a little bit dark.
Right.
There's I don't know if it's the de-essing we talked about before on the voice is in that range. It feels a little bit light.
One of the things I remembered was that I used a hardware de-esser at point of recording.
Oh yeah.
So although we did take off some of the de-essing that we'd added as well, which was mainly for the S's, I couldn't take it all off because I remember that we'd done.
Yeah.
Bear in mind this was recorded 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to bring it forward a little bit, and I wanted to give it a little bit more air, but a little bit more presence, and and it can sometimes take quite nice EQs to get in that sort of 2 to 4K and give things a bit of life. And also then compare it to the other tracks. This one felt darker.
Right.
And I think also what you're saying about the bottom end moving a lot better. The bottom end's nice. I really like the bottom end. I think actually I've done a little bit to the bottom end, but I think what I've done more is sorted out the rest of it, which makes the bottom end present better. Because you're getting like the top end of the bass and the kick are a bit more solid.
I think we noticed more the balance of the bottom end on some of the other tracks, which we'll wait until the EP's released before I put those on this channel. But like Making Up Your Mind, for example, I think you've done a much better job at clearing up that bottom end on that track.
And some of that's just been able to hear what's going on at the bottom end.
So which EQ did you use then to do that first bit of process?
Okay, so we have a little look at what we did in terms of the processing on the analog side and the digital side. I'm just going to take everything out for a second first. We can see what we do. So I'm just going to bypass everything. We can have a little. I'm going to do this in quite a linear way. But I don't work so linear when I'm actually working.
Doing it.
But, so I think so the first thing we'll do is the Great River here. So I'm doing some high pass filtering. It's kind of trying to get the bottom end really sitting really nicely so I'm doing a high pass 32, then a little bit of boost low down as well, just try and knit together that bottom end a little bit. Kind of opens it out like really. And then I'm taking out a little bit of 400 just kind of boxiness. Just go back a little, or go to a bit worse. Slightly mushy stuff that's kind of closed them down. And then I'm adding a bit of 8K to kind of brighten it up a little bit. I'm basically adding, because I felt this was a little bit dull overall, I'm also adding on the Maslek this high shelf starting at 937 Hertz and just bringing the, so starting very low but just bringing the overall mids and tops up. So if we have boosters, so you can really hear where it. Yeah. So if you have too much of it, it starts sounding really harsh. But if just a couple of dB really brings the detail back, brings it forward in the speakers. Then I think this 200 was just bringing that warmth back in that we might have lost a little bit of with that 400 cut. Again, it's 1 dB, so it's. Just opens it up as well. So then we come to the compression here, which is doing really small amounts with slow attack and slow release. Not really to try and control the level of the whole track, just trying to, it's a more an envelope shaping thing. So let's go here.
Subtle.
It's really subtle, yeah.
I take such careful steps ahead of me. Every step
Just a tiny bit more punch.
Yeah.
So then we come to the Phoenix compressor, the valve compressor. I'm just adding a couple of dB again, just to get the sound of the valves really.
Yeah.
So.
Brings a bit more warmth into it again, doesn't it?
Yeah. Obviously it's a little bit loud when we turn it in, so you've got to be careful not to be led astray about that bit.
But you can hear it on that kick.
Yeah, you can really hear it. It's really.
Yeah.
Kind of brings everything forward.
Yeah.
And then we're just using this on the Neve Portico. We're just using the silk here, which is transformer saturation, adding some harmonic information. If I go back to where it's a bit busier again.
Yeah.
Without it. There's the red.
Yeah, on the
The blue one sounds they're quite program dependent. It sounds a bit rounder.
Yeah,
I was looking a bit
harsh.
I wanted it rounded off because I've added a lot of top end in this process, so I don't want to. Yeah. So then go into our plug-in chain.
New ideas won't bring fresh air. Fixed ideas won't bring those changes.
There's a little delay on it because of I'm using very slow attack and slow release here to try and bring out a bit, kind of a bit subtle punch really.
I was trying to see if I could hear that on the snare.
Yeah, I think you will a little bit.
Running lives off beyond repair.
It is subtle, I'm struggling.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's more a kind of feeling of finishedness you get on this. It's hard to describe it as anything more than that.
I think that's also the interesting thing about how tuned a mastering engineer's ears are, as opposed to an amateur, mixer stroke production person like myself.
Yeah.
I'd really struggle to hear that difference. But clearly you can, because that's, you wouldn't have done it otherwise.
And that's the thing, is where having a sort of specialised mastering engineer, that's where the value of it is really.
Yes.
I'm spending all day listening to these compressors and deciding which one makes that little bit of difference. And also you're listening in an unfamiliar environment as well, which makes it more, if you knew the environment you'd be.
So what's your view with, there are people out there that claim they are mix engineers and mastering engineers. In my sort of limited knowledge, it does seem to me that they are two separate skill sets, And do you think that they can be combined, or do you think it's better that you have a good mix engineer followed by a good mastering engineer?
Yeah, I mean, like it's like asking a turkey how they feel about Christmas. I think this question, but I think having two different people do it. If I mix anything, which I rarely do now, but if I do mix something, I always want to send it to someone else to master.
Right.
And I master for a few mastering engineers who also mix, and they send me their stuff when they mixed it to master.
Right.
Which is always a slightly nerve-wracking
Yes.
job. But I think the thing is, mastering in the same room where you mix is really difficult, because you don't hear any problems in the monitoring aren't going to present, because it's the same monitoring in the same room. So I think that's a good reason. Also, it's like proofreading your own work.
Yeah.
There's things that you don't spot because you've heard it so much, and you kind of know the story behind why things are.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know why things are. I don't know that you've put your de-esser on in 20 years ago and can't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's really valuable. I could just take it on face value. Like, how can I make it sound better? Or
Yeah.
So I think definitely for, like, in terms of having it in a different room and just a different person who's away from the nitty gritty, because it's a zoomed out. Although we're making small changes here, we're trying to look at it in quite a zoomed out way.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've been
lived and breathed it forever and a day.
It's very hard to make that, and it's a skill. I think having that kind of zoom in and zoom out capability is a skill.
And I think also it's when if you've been involved in producing it, writing it, recording it, you kind of lose a little bit of that objective viewpoint. So I think it is. I mean, it would be nice if we could actually get to the stage where we could send our material out to a professional mix engineer as well. Although that is a bit I do enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I realise that my skill set compared to somebody that does it day in, day out, poles apart, and you'll probably notice that from doing the mastering, which we can perhaps come back to in a bit. But we've digressed, so we've gone from...
And again, we're adding a lot of top end above 4K and cleaning up some low mids again. Then we use the DS1, which we looked at earlier, which you can hear the range. It's just this range I'm compressing here. Because again, we've added a lot of top end in here.
Yeah.
So this is where it's starting to get a little bit harsh, a little bit hard.
So this is just trying to control that a little bit.
Yeah,
more
and
now.
again, just a tiny bit you'll see on this. The gain reduction is less than 1 dB. But
I have noticed that everything that you're doing is all about subtle changes. And other than that 3 dB boost on the Fab Filter EQ, it's all just a dB here, a dB there.
Yeah, I think, and sometimes I bend things well, but probably if you had all this top end, we'd be adding a fair bit of top end, but yeah, it just tends to be small changes. And sometimes no changes at all, as well. And then at the end I'm going through these two limiters, so this Weiss or Vice, I'm never sure which one it is. This is just taking off a few big peaks to kind of take the load off this limitless, which is...
And does that have a fast attack time then to deal with the peaks, or...?
Yeah, they're very fast. Where they generally have two stages of limiting. So one's a clipped stage where it just clips off the level,
right,
and it has no release time. So if you're like for very, very fast spikes from acoustic guitars and things, it's more transparent to just clip those off than it is to try and limit them. But then they'll go through a second stage, which will be a limiter, which will have a release time on. You can really see it clearly on limitless, because we'll see those little fast blips on the meters here.
Yeah.
Whereas the actual sort of limiting is happening.
New ideas won't bring fresh air. Stable motion, signal danger.
So I noticed on the limiters that you were showing me, all the dither was turned off. So how and when do you apply the dither?
Okay, so at the end of the process, so this is working at very high resolution now. Once I've got my album laid out with all the plugins and everything where I want them to be, I'll then render the whole album down into one audio file, and that'll still be at high bit rate, so 32-bit floating point. So we don't need dither at that point. So then I'll create a file like this, which you can see is heavily limited now. So this is the this is the audio for the whole EP at high resolution, 32-bit float point. Then from here, I will then on the output of this session, I'll put the dither on.
Right. Depending on
what format we're going to.
Yeah.
So 24-bit dither to make kind of the Apple Digital Masters. If we were going to CD, then I'd change that to 16.
Right.
Bits at that point as well.
So I know from the files that you sent me that we'd got some AAC files and the Apple Digital Mastered files.
Yep.
What's the difference between those two?
Okay, so the Apple Digital Masters are WAV files that meet the Apple Digital sort of standard.
And they're the ones that I would send, in my case, to CD Baby.
Well, for upload to streaming and things. So I tend to, sometimes people do normal WAVs as their standard master, and then you can buy an extra Apple Digital Master if you want. I tend to do all my WAVs as Apple Digital compliant, and then I'll tweak them slightly to go on CD.
Right.
So the AAC, as part of the quality checking process for the Apple Digital Masters, you have to run some checks on the WAV files and the AAC files, because basically when it goes to iTunes or Apple Music or whatever, that's going to turn into AACs.
Right.
So you have to run checks on both of those things. So as part of the process, I have to create the AACs. So I tend to send them on to the clients. But they're not really for upload. They're useful if you want to email things out for press coverage, or if you just want some easy emailable versions. But they're not for upload. You should upload the highest resolution and then let your digital distributor and the platforms do what they're going to do with it in terms of quality.
Okay. So having listened through the high quality Apple Mastered files, and as a client we are highly delighted with the results, and we're giving you the green light now to say, well, we're wanting to produce some CDs.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go to a replication company as opposed to a duplication company. What is it that we would receive from you in order for us to send that off to a record company?
Right. So in terms of duplicating or replicating, it's a folder that's got all the audio in, all the metadata, all the data. It's not actually an accessible format. It's kind of a lockdown format.
Yeah.
So once I give it to you, you can't change it.
No.
But what I also do is I create what's called a DDP player. So I send you a DDP, which is the one to be as a zip file, which is to be not touched and to go to the duplicators.
Just forward that as a zip file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I give you a DDP player, which is an accessible format. So you can open that. It'll open up, but it'll look like a CD player. You can preview it exactly what the CD is going to be. The benefit of the DDP image, rather than me burning the CD and sending it off and they can duplicate from that, is that when you burn the CD, there's going to be errors put into it in the burning process, whereas the DDP file should be error-free, error checked as well, and then they can also error check the DDP file at their end, and you know that you're going to get exactly what it should be with no errors on the discs.
Good. So I'm going to put you on the spot now, and I want you to be absolutely truthful, because this is the whole purpose of this exercise is a learning process. With the mix quality that we sent you, where do you think we need to focus our attention on improving? What would you say was the difference between an amateur mix like ours and the professional mixes that you get through, that you also work on?
I think probably consistency across the mixes. I had to do a bit more work on a couple of tracks.
Right.
But again, this is quite a particular situation where you've recorded things a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think that like little things like not putting the de-esser on recording, but you know that now.
In fact, on one of them, the de-essing was that bad it gave him a lisp.
Yeah, it does sound a little bit lispy in places.
Yeah.
And also I think the technology has come on a lot. Like 20 years ago, digital converters, even at the top end, didn't sound anywhere near what they sound now. That's something that's changed massively. And I think so your kind of sound of the conversion of the time is imprinted on the on the audio, which is not a lot you can do about now.
Well, I think you've certainly made the best job you could out of.
Yeah,
you know.
I think it was getting that sort of control in the bottom end as well.
Yeah.
That kind of punchy control in the bottom end is it's the hardest thing to get right.
Yes.
It's not. It's
Yes.
it's the hardest thing to get right in any mix.
There are hours and hours and hours of YouTube videos on how to do it, and it's still one of those you either understand and get it, and I think your monitoring is critical for that. I think we got a better job since getting the Adams 877s than we did with the previous monitors.
Yeah, and monitoring is critical. It's the one thing that you can't fake in your studio.
No.
If you can't hear what you're doing, you can't do it. So
No.
it's the one thing that has to be. You know, if this basement was start to fill with water, the thing that I'd be saving would be the monitors first.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Sam, thank you very much for going through all that. That certainly kind of rounds off the whole process from us, starting with the mix all the way through to the mastering. As I say, guys, I'll leave a link at the end of this video to when Sam came to our studio and gave us the advice on some of the mixing issues that we've got. I'll also, as I say, leave some links below for Sam's contact details. Highly recommend him as a mastering engineer. I don't know as a mix engineer yet. I might just try him out. Might send him one of our tracks to mix and see what he does.
I don't remember how to mix, to be honest with you now. But
and also I'll leave some links to some of his playlists so you can actually listen to some of his work. So Sam, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure, thank you.
Hopefully it won't be that long before we get some more material over to you to get out there into the big wide world.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Sir.
Cheers.